Letter from the governor submitted to the council. Dear councilors, I am pleased to nominate Sarah B. Hamilton to the position of Associate Justice of the Superior Court. I submit this nomination for the advice and consent of the Executive Council pursuant to Part 2, Chapter 2 of the Constitution of the Commonwealth of Mass. And I am enclosing the nominee's resume for your convenience. Sincerely, Governor Maura T. Healy. So as we get going, Attorney Hamilton, if you want to introduce the folks you brought with you today, you can do that, and then we'll go ahead and get your first witness up.
Sure, thank you. So I'll just start over here on my left. I have Attorney Robert Mount here. He's a managing attorney with South Coastal Counties Legal Services. Attorney Maura Tansley, who's a partner at Tansley Halloran, one of my witnesses today. I'm happy to have my mother here, Cynthia Hamilton. Sitting next to her is Assistant District Attorney Paul Bolton, who works with the Worcester County District Attorney's Office, also one of my witnesses today. Next to him, we have Attorney Kara O'Donnell, who works in the Worcester office of CPCS. Next to her, we have Chief Rakucci, who is the chief of the Superior Court. And then finally, Attorney John Sadek, who also is an attorney with the Worcester office of the Committee for Public Services.
Great, and I understand one of your potential witnesses, Attorney Adrian Angus, can't be here today due to illness.
Yes, that's correct.
Okay, well, if you'd like, we can go ahead and call whomever your first witness is.
Sure, I will call Maura Tansley.
Good morning, Attorney Tansley.
Good morning. Good morning, counselors. As you have heard, my name is Maura Tansley. I'm a criminal defense attorney based in Worcester, and I'm absolutely delighted to be here today on behalf of Sarah Hamilton. When I became a lawyer in the fall of 2012, I immediately began work in the Worcester CPCS office. What that means is that I have been lucky enough to know Sarah my entire legal career. In addition to being colleagues for over a decade, we became friends, roommates, and co-counsel. My very first impression of Sarah was that she was unwavering in her commitment to her craft and steadfast in her approach to justice. And that initial impression has held true all these years. As a new attorney, I watched in awe as she tried incredibly challenging cases in Superior Court, a place where there still aren't enough female defense attorneys. When those cases meant she was confronted with unfamiliar legal issues, she was not daunted. She dove in with excitement, precision, and intelligence until she mastered the issue. I look forward to seeing her use the same approach in the civil session. After I had a few years of experience, Sarah asked me to second seat a case of a young man facing sexual assault charges. I saw firsthand her thorough and thoughtful approach to not only the case, but also her client. Our client was found not guilty, but that is not why I bring up this case at this particular moment. Recently, this client found himself back in Worcester and needed help. Not legal help, just help getting himself established. And he reached out to Sarah. Because while yes, Sarah is a fiercely intelligent and skilled attorney, she is also a wonderful human being. And he knew that Sarah would take his call and do what she could to help. The breadth and depth of her legal experience, coupled with her unwavering ability to recognize the humanity in the parties and disputes that will be before her, make her an exemplary Associate Justice of the Superior Court. I am not at all surprised that Sarah, that same attorney I met 12 years ago, is before you today. She is a focused and driven individual, completing undergraduate at Northeastern, going right to law school, then CPCS, where she started in district court, moving to Superior, murderless, and ultimately now senior trial counsel. Of course, Superior Court judge is the next step. She is eminently qualified and prepared for this position, where she will continue her commitment to justice in the courts of the Commonwealth. I'm honored to be one of the two people to speak today on Sarah's behalf, but please know that my remarks are echoed by a chorus of people who are so proud to support her nomination. Fellow public defenders, clerks, ADAs, DAs, administrative support staff, court employees, investigators, interpreters, clients, and of course, her mother and late grandfather. We are all deeply encouraged that you will have the opportunity to be the council members that vote Sarah Hamilton as the next Associate Justice of the Superior Court. I thank you for the opportunity to speak on behalf of such an outstanding nominee.
Thank you. I agree. I personally am going to be honored to vote for Attorney Hamilton when the time comes. But first, we'll see if any counselors have a question for you, Attorney Halloran. So we'll start with Counselor Marilyn Petito Devaney. Any questions, Counselor Devaney?
Pardon me?
Any questions for the witness?
No, I thought you asked all of us. I didn't raise my hand.
Oh, I apologize. Any questions from the council? Perfect. Okay, excellent. Well,
Thank you.
thank you, Attorney. And I was remiss in not introducing the council previously. We have Counselor Marilyn Petito Devaney with us, Counselor Christopher Ianella, Counselor Eileen Duff, Counselor Terry Kennedy, and as you may know, coming from Central Mass this morning, traffic is crazy. So I know that our fellow councilors Jacobs and Ferreira are en route. And with that, thank you. You can go ahead and offer your statement.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Paul Bolton. I'm an assistant district attorney in Worcester County. Basically, an assistant DA for basically my entire legal career. I'm really happy to be here to testify on Sarah's behalf. Being an exemplary judge of the Superior Court. We knew each other for about 10 years. I had the opportunity to have a case with her and also to observe her advocating on behalf of her clients. I can tell you that she has a substantial knowledge of the law. She is a person who's a zealous advocate, but always ethical. And so I'm really excited to be here. To vote for her to be a justice of the Superior Court.
Excellent. Thank you. Any counselors have questions for the witness? No. I appreciate you being here. Whenever we have a prosecutor, it's great to have defense witnesses, and whenever we have a defense attorney, it's great to have prosecutorial witnesses. So thank you for being here this morning.
Thank you.
And with that, is there anyone here in opposition to the nominee? Seeing none. Attorney Hamilton, the floor is yours.
Good morning, members of the Governor's Council. Thank you for devoting your time today and prior to this hearing to reviewing my application and to speaking with and meeting with me. I very much appreciate all of your time and attention. I would like to thank Governor Healy and Lieutenant Governor Driscoll. I am honored and humbled by the trust you have put in me with this nomination. I would also like to thank the Governor's Chief Legal Counsel, Paige Scott Reed, and Deputy Legal Counsel, Derek Hesselheim, and their staff, as well as Valerie McCarthy, for your advice and assistance through this process. Thank you to the members of the Judicial Nominating Commission for your hard work and diligence in reviewing judicial applications like mine. Lastly, I'd like to thank the witnesses who just spoke on my behalf for their kind words, and all of my family and friends who have been there for me during this process. I cannot thank you all enough. Members of the council, I know at this point that you've learned much about my work and professional life, so I'd like to start by telling you a bit about my personal background. I'm a middle child raised by a single mother. My mother, Cynthia, became a single parent of 3 when she was in her early 20s, and my sister, brother, and I were all under 5 years of age. I grew up in Millbury, Mass, which, if you don't know, is right next door to Worcester. When I was a young child, my mother and siblings and I lived with my grandparents. I don't think it would come as a surprise to anyone here that being a single parent of 3 is difficult, as there are both time and financial challenges to raising 3 kids alone. So my mother needed that extra help and support from my grandparents when we were little. We did later move to our own house in a public housing neighborhood in Millbury, and that's where I lived for my preteen and teenage years until I graduated high school and went to college. My mother's example as a single parent has led me to be a fiercely independent and hardworking person my entire life. I studied hard in high school and college to get good grades, while also working part-time jobs at retail stores such as Bradley's and Barnes & Noble, all of which helped me financially support myself through college with both scholarships earned and money saved. I went to Northeastern University for both college and law school. In college, I majored in political science and English. Political science was an interest sparked in me by my grandfather, who I used to see follow politics in the news religiously when we lived with him. My grandfather passed in May of 2020, but has left a very large and lasting impression on my life. My path to becoming a lawyer started with a decision to go to law school solely because I wanted to earn a higher degree. I didn't initially know anything about the legal profession. I didn't have any lawyers in my family. I am the first person in my family to graduate from college. Luckily, while studying political science at Northeastern, I was fortunate to take classes with our former governor of Massachusetts, Michael Dukakis, and he became a mentor to me. When I spoke with him about law school, he pushed me to pursue a career in public interest law, and he's the person who first told me what a public defender was and explained that I could have a legal career devoted to public service where I helped real people with real problems. Professor Dukakis's focus on public service resonated with me because it aligned with values that my mother exemplified throughout my life growing up. Growing up, many of my friends had challenges in their lives, difficult home situations, complicated relationships with parents. Some had involvement in the juvenile legal system. But in addition to caring for my siblings and I, my mother was a non-judgmental listener and supporter for those friends, regardless of their background and circumstances, and became like a second parent to many. She set an example of having empathy for others, not defining people by mistakes they may have made, and not giving up on people. I have carried these lessons forward in my work as an attorney. Over my career, I've endeavored to be a patient and attentive listener for clients and to show empathy for circumstances that may have led to their case, such as childhood trauma, homelessness, and mental health and substance use issues. I've also prioritized understanding the humanity of each and every one of my clients. Clients who have represented a diverse range of races, ethnicities, sexual orientations, education levels, ages, backgrounds, and circumstances. I will hold on to these same values if I am confirmed by this council, and I promise that all who appear before me will be treated with compassion, fairness, dignity, and respect. Over my career, particularly in the years that I have practiced in Worcester Superior Court, I have engaged in significant trial practice and litigation. Yet I've also been able to engage cooperatively and collaboratively with prosecutors on cases to reach fair results for both sides short of trial. I have learned that there is value in each of those avenues to resolution of a case, and that whichever path a case takes, the work must be done with skill and care. If confirmed, I will bring high-quality work and professionalism to the bench, both of which are hallmarks of the Superior Court. A judge in the Superior Court sees a wide range of cases, from prosecutions of individuals for the most serious crimes we have in the Commonwealth, to business disputes and medical claims that are central to people's lives. A Superior Court judge sees people in some of the most difficult times in their lives. If confirmed, I will use the knowledge and experience I have gained over my career to try to reach just resolutions of cases, to help the community heal and make victims whole, to provide justice and fairness to those suffering loss and harm in the civil context, and to put people back on the right path forward. Serving the public has been a priority of my professional life. For me, being an Associate Justice of the Superior Court will be the ultimate act of public service to the Commonwealth and to my community in Worcester in particular. I believe deeply in equal justice under the law, regardless of who we are, how we present, or what we have done. I'm eager for the opportunity to continue my public service from the bench if I am fortunate enough to be confirmed by this council. Thank you for your time, and happy to answer any questions you might have.
Thank you very much, Attorney Hamilton. We will start with Counselor Jacobs, who, as promised, has arrived after difficult traffic. Counselor Jacobs, any questions for the nominee?
First off, it's good to see you. We had a really in-depth conversation. I appreciate you coming out, so thank you for that. We did talk about it when we sat down, but I wanted to give you another opportunity here to talk about your thoughts around, and in your application you refer to one of the biggest challenges you see for the court is the systemic racism and the presence of both implicit and explicit bias that you've observed. And so I wanted to give you an opportunity to sort of share what your awareness is around those issues, and then what, if anything, you could bring to bear to ideally affect some change there.
Sure, thank you. Obviously implicit bias in the legal profession and most professions and areas of life is so important. It's so important for people to be aware of their own implicit bias, to take the time to take steps, take a breath, and really think to make sure that the judgments they're making are not clouded by that. Certainly it is still a part of the court system. And it is really important for judges to be aware of. I know we talked a little about, for example, just things that might seem not overtly race-based arguments being used in court, but they are at times. One example of them is sometimes in doing dangerousness hearings on cases, there'll be people who are facing a dangerousness hearing. They may have a juvenile background, and that's often brought up for consideration by the judge. And I think one thing that is important sometimes to focus on there is that some individuals who have a juvenile record, it can be because they went to a school that there were police officers in versus someone who might live in a more suburban area that doesn't have that kind of presence. And so what might be a schoolhouse fight in one suburban town where there's not an officer in the school, and that person may ultimately just face some kind of suspension. In a more urban area where there's an officer, it might turn into a case. And I think that's just one way that, these kind of issues of race can be litigated and used against people in somewhat of an unfair way. And so I think it's very important for judges just to have an open mind to those arguments. I think lawyers are doing a good job of trying to bring those arguments forward. And we all just have to really be in tune with our own biases.
We had talked to you about and I think if I'm remembering correctly, when we talked, you had suggested that maybe this was a prior trend that maybe has faded somewhat, but the trend, whether it still exists at this same rate today or not, but the injection of bias around identifying or just characterizing people as gang involved just because of the neighborhood they may have grown up in being a neighborhood that is a known to have activity, but without evidence of being involved, the sort of being painted with a brush that kind of characterizes a person in a way that then brings its own level of bias. Can you talk a little bit about that as well?
Sure. Yeah, I mean, I think particularly in these cases that we're seeing a lot more, which are young people who are charged with gun crimes. And a lot of times in those circumstances, there are allegations or information put in the police report that that young person is gang affiliated or gang involved. And a lot of times that's a kind of a blanket statement. And so there are times that may be true, but I think it's important. What we're talking about is, judges just kind of being aware and really kind of looking into what's presented to them. And if it's just a statement that this person is gang involved or gang affiliated with no kind of other backup evidence to that, it might be something to think about critically. Because certainly, if the arguments is being made, this person needs to be held because they're gang involved. I think judges just, they need to really look deeply into that.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that. We talked at length. I feel like I could talk to you all day about so many things. I genuinely enjoyed the conversation we had and the way that you think and the values that you have. We often say it in this room, but in this case, the enthusiasm from your counselor and support that you have from him says a lot to me about who you are, in addition to just how you ring through in your application, which just jumped out to me in so many points and places where I was kind of like clapping along to what you had to say about who you are and how you think. So I don't have any further questions. I'm just really happy to see you here again and look forward to when you get brought before us.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Counselor Jacobs. Counselor Devaney, any questions for the nominee?
See you again.
Me too.
Thank you for all the time you've given me. I really appreciate that. First of all, you're 42. Okay, almost 30 years you'll be on the bench. How are you gonna keep yourself to, you know, up to par and up with everything?
Sure. I think one of the exciting things about the practice of law is that the law is constantly changing, and it's what keeps it really interesting. Not only does the law constantly change with new developments in case law, but the law also kind of tracks developments in science and the technical fields. And so I think, in the years that I've been an attorney, that's one thing that has kept me interested, and I think that will be the same thing going forward. I think it's also being aware of opportunities that the profession offers to you, and over the life of your career, taking those opportunities to help you stay engaged. So for example, in my current job, even before I officially took the role of senior trial counsel, for many, many years, what I was doing is on my cases, I was bringing in less experienced attorneys to act as co-counsel or second seats. And working in that mentoring role really kind of keeps you fresh and excited about the practice and about your job, because you're kind of helping someone else along. So I think those are ways, and then obviously just having a really good support system and a good plan of self-care. Obviously, we talk a lot now about lawyer well-being and well-being in the legal profession, and that's something I take seriously. And so I've devoted a lot of time to thinking about that and practicing.
How about pro bono?
So my entire legal career, I've worked at CPCS. So every single client that I've represented has been a court-appointed case. I've never had a private practice. So every single one of my cases is representing someone that's appointed by the court.
So you don't get paid. Pro bono means you don't get paid when you represent that person.
So I work for the Public Defender Division of the Committee for Public Counsel Services, which is the Committee for Public Counsel Services has two pieces, the Public Defender Division and the Private Counsel Division. As a staff attorney with the Public Defender Division, I have full-time represented clients that have been appointed by the court. So I am paid a salary by the state for that work.
So you don't do any, so someone can't afford a lawyer and you're still paid that, you are paid, even though you call it pro bono. I don't understand that.
Yeah, so anyone in the Commonwealth who is indigent and cannot afford an attorney, they can get a court-appointed attorney through the Committee for Public Counsel Services. So we represent only indigent people that are not able to afford counsel.
But you're paid for every case you serve on.
I'm paid by the state a salary for working as a public defender, but we can't, because we're full-time staff attorneys and are assigned court-appointed cases, taking a case kind of pro bono would be outside of the realm of what we're allowed to do.
Why weren't you interested in having your own law practice?
So I have immensely enjoyed my career with CPCS over all of these years. I think the things for me that have been so that I've loved so much about working at CPCS is we receive really great training from the agency. We have a great training department, and the managing directors and the heads of CPCS take that really seriously. Also working at the Public Defender's Office, you have a great community of other lawyers that are constantly around you at various experience levels and various backgrounds that you can collaborate with, that you can lean on when you need support. And so those have really kind of been the reasons, I've always wanted to serve in a public service capacity. That's been the priority for me. And so opening my own law firm, running a business, trying to do law from that angle, running a business and making money hasn't been a priority. It's been to just be a public defender and serve the public.
So what is the percentage of your civil and criminal cases?
We do not handle any civil cases.
You don't have any?
No, we just handle criminal.
Okay. Tell us about the Soldana, Mr. Soldana, that case?
Sure. So that was actually my first jury trial in the Superior Court. That was someone, he was charged with a firearm offense, and the defense that we used at trial was misidentification. That case involved a lot of litigation before we got to trial on issues of whether or not the identification of him could be used at trial. And that was really kind of a rewarding case for me because I came in as, I believe, the third, if not later, attorney on the case. He had had several prior attorneys. And so coming on the case and working with him and being able to build trust with him and eventually get the case to trial was such a rewarding experience for me.
Well, the Superior Court, you're required to write, and tell us about the writing sample that you gave the council.
Sure. That was a memorandum of law for a motion to suppress, which had to do with issues related to the stop of an individual for an alleged firearm offense. And it predates a little bit some of the more recent advances and changes in law we've had on firearms cases. But the basis of it essentially was that the stop of my client was unlawful and that the detention of him was prolonged. And that motion was denied, and that individual ended up resolving his case with a plea.
What about, I thought that was an interesting case, Miss Ravanas, that was quite a case. Tell us about that.
Sure. That was a woman who, at the time of the offense, she's someone who has a long history of mental health issues. At the time of the offense, she was unmedicated and she was very much in the throes of her mental health. It was a very challenging and difficult case in that when I was first appointed, she was not competent to stand trial and she was hospitalized. And it took some time of her being hospitalized, being on medication to kind of regain competency. And those cases are always challenging because as a lawyer, your job is to guide your client through the system to make sure they understand the process, that they're part of a process. And it took a while, but we were able to do that and eventually go to trial on that case.
So, Mr. Foley, just like Soldana, they were concerned that you had never had a murder case, wasn't that?
Mhm.
the problem too?
Yes.
Tell us how you resolved that.
So again, there was kind of a long road to get there. But I think as with any client, I exercised patience and I worked hard just to make sure that I met frequently with that client and made sure that he saw that I knew his case. I knew all of the facts of his case, that I knew the law. And over time, just kind of through showing him, I was able to convince him that I could represent him and I could represent him well on this case. I think it's one of these things, like in a lot of parts of life, that it's one thing to tell someone something, it's one thing to say I'm qualified, but it's another thing to show it. And that's what I was able to do over that case.
So, when you look at the people that you represented, we talked about that, and you said that you represented equal men and women. How about the gay population? How much involvement did you have representing?
Yeah, I mean, over the course of my career, I've represented people of so many different backgrounds, including people of different, sexual orientations. But the client population that I've represented has been so diverse as far as races, ages, ethnicities, genders. It's been really rewarding to represent so many different people.
Is there a specific case you could tell us about?
I don't know that there's a specific case that I can talk about of representing someone, that their sexual orientation was kind of a big piece of that. But really, all of my practice has been working with a representative population.
Well, this is quite an achievement for someone 42 to go to the Superior Court. What aspect of the Superior Court really attracted you?
One of the parts of the Superior Court that is the most interesting to me is the working with experts. The Superior Court, most of the cases that they are really complex and can be really litigation heavy. They also, because of the seriousness of a lot of the crimes that are handled in Superior Court, when they're investigated by police and law enforcement, they're using all different kinds of evidence. And so we as attorneys are working with experts in all kinds of fields. So DNA, ballistics, cell phone and computer forensic technology. And it's really interesting, I think, as a lawyer where, you're trained to be a lawyer and you're working on the law, but you also get to step into these scientific and technical fields that you might not otherwise associate with the law or being a lawyer. And so that's really interested me and excited me over my career. And I'm confirmed, I'm really excited to kind of see that from a different angle and be able to really dive into expert testimony and technical and scientific evidence that might be before me.
Counselor, we have 1 minute if you want to. Allow the
50 years, which I think is awful, because I think any council should be able to ask as many questions for the public, but I'm not allowed. They voted 7-1. So I can't ask any more questions because I did have a good question for you. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you, Counselor. So now, any questions for the nominee?
Just a few. With respect to Councilor Jacobs, you talked about judges, that some judges, there's a bias against minority people. Did I hear that correctly?
Yes, I mean, I think, all people have some sort of implicit bias, right? I think we all do.
Because. Bias.
Well, I think that's the thing with implicit bias, right? It's like just when we're confronted by a situation, being able to take a step back and think about whether a decision we're making or way we're looking at something is, that bias is at play.
I'm a little confused. Are you saying that you've appeared in front of a lot of judges?
Yeah.
Fall River area, Worcester area, and the whole western part of the state. We have a problem with some of the judges that are they biased against minority people?
I think what I was talking about and the point that I'm trying to make, right, is that we have to be aware, judges have to be aware of racial issues and other issues of bias in cases. And so I think the point is that judges need to critically look at the evidence presented before them. And not that any particular, I'm not thinking of any particular judge that I think is overtly racist or deciding things based on racial bias, but I think in some of the arguments that are sometimes can be made in front of judges, they just have to be aware of that and they have to critically look at the evidence.
You mentioned that you must think there's a problem. Some type of concern. If you thought there was no concern whatsoever, you would have mentioned.
Sure.
So my question is, if you appear in front of judges, who you felt, you've gone through a large, in front of a lot of judges, have you gone through certain judges, this judge is definitely biased, my client is a black female, male, this could be a tough one, because I think that this judge has certain biases against black people.
I think that I think that there are times when you appear before a judge and it does not seem that they're necessarily hearing all the arguments before them. And so, for example, sure, yeah. So, in what we were talking about specifically, I think there are times when you might have a case where there's a dangerousness hearing before a judge. And the Commonwealth is asking to hold someone without bail. And one of the arguments that's being made is that the person is a member of a gang or gang affiliated. and that might be mentioned in a police report, but there's not really any discussion of how you arrived at that conclusion or why that's being said. And is it just the fact that that person lives in a neighborhood where there's a high concentration of gay people, and that's kind of who they're affiliated with or associated with? And I think sometimes pushback on arguments of that, I don't know that sometimes there are judges that are engaging with that argument. And so that's just the point that I think these issues just really need to
Without
be.
the issue you have with the police, the police right to report, with the police right to report. You know, so and so, yeah, he's a member of the gang, that's not the judge, that's. Do you have an issue with the police as well?
No, I think, you know, what I'm saying is that it's just how the argument is being presented and whether or not, you know, a judge is willing to look critically at what it's presented with.
You're clearly giving me the impression that you don't think that these judges, you know, they're biased, they're not looking at the real facts, that's the impression that I'm getting. My question to you is, what are your options? So you appear in front of a judge, and you felt that this judge was biased. What could you have done?
As an attorney? I think your job as the attorney is just to, when you think that bias is at play, is to make those arguments. And ultimately, you know, it is up to the judge, and the hope is that, you know, judges are, and I think that, you know, there is training and there's a lot of discussion these days about these issues, and I think people are trying.
Report the judge, correct? If I put it this way, I'm an attorney, I don't appear in court at all, more of a businessman. But if I had an issue with a judge, and I thought he was biased against my client because of the color of his skin, I would believe it. If I thought that, and I had evidence, I'd report him. Have you ever thought of report? Have you reported any judge?
No.
Why not? I mean, you make it seem like this is not one isolated instance. But this happens. I'm just curious. Are you being fair to your client when you represent a client and you know you go in front of a judge, he's got a reputation of being biased? File a motion to recuse, and a judge, will you recuse yourself because of, you know, your biases? Have you reported the judge to the Judicial Conduct Committee or the Board of Bar Overseers? Have you done any of that? Because to me, one instance is one instance too many. I'm clearly getting the impression from you that this is a problem, and as an attorney, you know, you've handled a ton of cases. Have you ever reported a judge because of their biases against, I assume, your client and a lot of other clients?
I've not ever reported a judge. I think what I'm talking about is that everyone, whether it's judges, attorneys, everyone, there are implicit biases that are in play always in our lives. And so I'm not saying that, you know, I've been in front of all these judges and I think that they are making, you know, race-based decisions on cases. What I'm saying is that I think that judges need to, when these arguments are made, need to really kind of critically engage with those arguments. I think many are, and I think that is something that has improved over time. Yes.
There's some judges who are not critically engaged.
I think there are times when you're in court and not just on race-based issues, but other times that you are in court and. Sure.
You think there's judges? You said some.
I think that there are times when you are in court making arguments and perhaps, you know, it seems like decisions have already been made or the judge just isn't engaging with arguments at all, whether they're not engaged with that particular argument. I mean, we're often, when we're standing in front of a judge we're advocating for a lot of different issues and making a lot of different arguments.
I mean, to me, I thought the judge was had a bias against, you know, black people. people of color, I wouldn't just stand back. I report them.
Sure, I appreciate that.
I'm getting the impression that you see this as an issue, and with all due respect, you haven't done anything about it. Have you reported to your supervisor that this judge is, biased against people of color? Have you ever reported to the Board of Bar Overseers of the Judicial Conference? To me, that's a serious allegation. I don't think, I have a problem with any judge who's biased against people of color. That's a real serious allegation. I wouldn't like, I don't like it. But you haven't done any, other than talk about it here, you haven't done anything about it.
I think that the points that I was making about implicit bias and race-based arguments being made in courtrooms and judges thinking about them and being engaged with them, or not saying that my experiences, I go in front of a lot of judges and they are racist or making decisions based on race. I think, and I apologize if the way that I said it kind of made it seem that that's what I was saying, but certainly, my argument and the point that I'm making is that implicit bias is an important issue for all of us to be aware.
Council, yeah, left if you want to hit any other issues.
Thank you.
Thank you.
If someone asked me, how would we rate the judges in Massachusetts? Excellent, good, fair, poor. I would say excellent. How would you answer that question based upon also of what you said today?
I would say excellent as well.
Thank you very much. I appreciate that answer. He's the best sponsor right there. Councilor DiPaolo. As soon as your name was brought forth to the council, he called me. He's a strong supporter. And, I know that issue you and I just talked about, but I can truly understand why he supports you. I think you're going to be a great addition to the Superior Court.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor. Councilor Duff, do you have any questions for the nominee?
I agree that we all have implicit bias. And, I have had to work on my own a lot, particularly with judicial issues. This US Supreme Court, frankly. I mean, implicit bias isn't always racial, it's a lot of different things. So I understand what you're saying, I think it was quite clear. What I want to ask you about is, and I also want to say, I heard from multiple attorneys that have sat in that seat since I've been asking about particularly Black and brown women being denied prescriptions that they've needed for mental health issues. I've heard multiple times about judges rolling their eyes at that issue. That's implicit bias. I mean, does that mean you need to report them? Does that mean they need to be fired? No. That's something for the chiefs, I think, to handle. But it's real, it's in our courts and we can't deny it. But the issue I want to talk to you about today, just very briefly, that I think is of paramount importance right now is the safety of our judges, our attorneys, CPCS, almost maybe more than anyone else, because you're doing public defense, and court staff. I think it was just last week, again, another judge was attacked in the courtroom by somebody. And so I just implore you to make sure that you have conversations with your friends and your family and your community, whether that's, bloodlines or love lines or faith-based or whatever it is, that you have backup. Because at some point, we make mistakes because we're human, right? No one's perfect. Or you make a decision and it's just unpopular. It happened in my district. Very conservative judge made a ruling that people thought was way too lenient. The irony of it was he was a law and order kind of guy. No one could figure out how he came to this. It doesn't matter with the judge. You're privy to information we're not privy to. And your safety is paramount, as is everyone else that works in that courtroom. I take it very seriously. It concerns me that we see, we know the climate in the country right now on different things, but really concerns me that we see things in the newspapers and stuff, you know, calling people out that work in government, in our court systems as, you know, just living off the dole of the public. It's not true. Every single one of you works very hard. You do great public service. Your safety is important. And so, you know, I don't want to be getting down, but I really do want you to think about that. Be prepared for it. Have the conversations with the people close to you that, you know, things may happen. And if you don't feel safe, let a court officer or somebody else know, because it's really not okay. You know, we're blessed. We live in Massachusetts. We're so blessed. We have the best government in the country, the best courts in the country. But, you know, every once in a while you get a loose cannon, and you don't know this is going to stop. So just be aware, be careful, and I think you're going to do a great job. I think your life experience, I think your work experience as a public defender is just something that is tremendously needed on the Superior Court, and will give a ballast to things that we're always seeking, and we work, you know, this crew here, they work very, very hard to get the right people in position. You know, we can only put them there if they apply. So thanks for applying. That's it, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you very much, Counselor. Counselor Kennedy, questions for the nominee?
You're an easy grader. You give all the judges excellent. I'm like a C+ grader. But I spent a lot of time in court, so. We had a very long conversation on the phone, and you answered all my questions. I don't have to go over them for the sake of hearing myself talk. You've got a huge supporter in Councilor DiPaolo. I've heard your name for a long time, just since you've been nominated. He's been pushing you and trying to get somebody in the Worcester slot there for a long time. He deserves a lot of credit for it. And a huge supporter of yours. As I told you on the phone, if I don't vote for you, it's gonna break my arms. I'll be voting for you next week.
Thank you, Counselor. And Counselor Ferrer, do you have questions?
Thank you.
For the nominee?
I remember what Council Kennedy said about you. My counselor to the left, he's been a huge supporter of yours, speaks very highly, and definitely wants to see your nomination go through. I do have a question about civil. So I work at a civil law firm. I've been doing civil stuff for 30 years. And you know, as ages go for judges, you're in the very, very young spectrum. You could be there for 30 years. Are you prepared to do that? And what have you done, or what are you going to do to catch up to the civil side of things?
Sure. So I guess first and foremost, I would say I'm a hard worker and a fast learner. So as far as getting where I need to be on the civil, you know, the short answer to that is I'll work hard and put in the time to figure it out. I mean, certainly as a public defender for the last 16 years, I'm not a stranger to working long hours, working overtime. It's kind of second nature at this point. I have been trying to do some work on that now. I've been reviewing the civil rules of procedure, been talking to some friends and colleagues that are civil practitioners, and I've identified some CLEs, a few that are recorded webcasts online that I can watch in regards to civil practice in the Superior Court and civil motion practice. So certainly those are steps that I'm taking and will continue to take. And you know, over my career, I've worked on some high-level litigation in the criminal context, and like I was speaking a little bit about earlier, I've had to work with experts on learning different scientific and technical fields. So kind of stepping outside of the zone of criminal law, I've had to do that in some instances, and I will work hard to get there. And I'm frankly really excited to learn the civil side of the law. There'll be a learning curve, and it's a growth area for me, but I'm excited about it.
You're gonna be able to hold lawyers' feet to the fire. I work at a firm where we want to try cases. We want to say no to multi-million-dollar offers and try cases. And we have a hard time right now, and I'm glad that the administration is helping out a lot, and you got a great chief here who I've seen in court hold people's feet to the fire. There was no squirming like, oh, I can't, I'm really busy, a medical malpractice case. I don't have an opening for a year and a half, and the case is already 3 years old. Are you gonna be able to say to them, I don't care, just get someone else in the firm and try it? You're gonna be able to do that?
I think so, yes. I mean, you know, obviously I will rely on the lawyers to try their case and make their positions known. But certainly I think, we all have an interest in cases moving forward and deficiency of the courts.
I appreciate that. A lot of lawyers, after the pandemic, were all case of 5 years old. I don't know if that happens on the criminal side, as much you guys take precedence, but on the civil side, lawyers been waiting for a long time, and I know the chief's working very hard and diligent, and it's great to see. And I hope that you can help on that front, making people try their cases and go to trial and
Absolutely.
give them continuance, that's continuance, especially when the case is 4 or 5 years old already. But like I said, your counselor does have a great thing to say about you. When I was a police chief, I didn't always promote to sergeant, lieutenant, or captain, the oldest people that hung around the most. I promoted those that showed great strength in their work ethic and what they brought to the table. And so your age doesn't bother me, is what I'm saying. You're a hard worker, and you have a great resume, and I'll vote for you next week. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Counselor. Attorney Hamilton, you faced some tough questions, and I really appreciate the dialogue you engaged with Counselor Ianella. It's just a matter of evolutionary biology that we all have implicit biases. Our brains can only handle so much sensory input at once. And so we create paradigms that help us make sense of what's in front of us. And sometimes we become blind to those things. I've seen people in your chair in prior administrations who declined to admit that they hold any implicit biases at all. And I'm very grateful to Governor Healy, her administration, Chief Legal Counsel Paige Scott Reed, and the entire legal counsel office for giving us nominees who are willing to engage with these issues. Your experience is outstanding. You have folks in the Worcester community, our second largest city, both on the defense side and in Joe Early's district attorney's office, including obviously Attorney Bolton, who is here today. I appreciate that very much. You've done a lot of outreach in the community, whether it's raising money for Friendly House or the Trial Court Advanced Skill Program, which I know Attorney Stuart Hurwitz is the lead on in the CPCS office, another outstanding attorney who's very highly regarded in Worcester. I have no questions for you. I've been familiar with you for some time. Folks in the bar community have spoken to me from the moment I took this office. So I'll be very proud to present your name next week and to vote affirmatively for your nomination. And with that, yes, Councilor Devaney.
It's a point of personal privilege.
Absolutely.
Councilor Chair. I would like to introduce one of our most outstanding judges in Massachusetts ever, and that's Judge Michael Zudi. And I would like to, with your permission, read the statement I made when I voted for this wonderful gentleman. And the only one that was here was Counselor Ianella, who proudly voted.
Councilor, you may embarrass our humble judge here.
The
I voted for him.
most ethical individual, well-qualified, experienced lawyer. Mr. Azudi has had so many cases, they can't be counted. As an assistant district attorney, he had 20 to 30 hearings a day. He had in his career 47 trial arbitrations and evidentiary hearings before judges. These can be more important and demonstrate how the attorney has worked successful to compromise, to settle cases. At Attorney Rizzudi's hearing, I asked him about representing Frederick Wilshire, a man who had been in prison for the past 36 years, who was convicted of murder and sentenced to life without parole. The person identifying was from a teenager who identified him in the dark 180 feet away. There was a report implicating another suspect that investigators failed to turn over, that was not even given to the judge at the trial, that would have warranted a new trial. Later, even a letter to Mr. Winchell's mother from a man claiming he was the killer was rejected for a new trial. I just want to mention that as many as 1 out of 10 people may be innocent, like Winchell, who are serving life sentences because of faulty or hidden information. In the Boston Globe yesterday, you gotta remember, this is April 12, 2017 that I wrote this. In the Boston Globe yesterday, and I quote, "The police report that prompted Judge Berry to overturn Winchell's conviction surfaced in 2010 after Michael D. Rizzuti, a partner in the Boston law firm K&L Gates, began representing Winchell for free." This is an example of the compassion and caring of Attorney Rizzuti. As I have said many times, compassion is a most important quality in a judge. Mr. Winchell, at age 65, after 36 years, has lost more than half of his life, 36 years. Family moments, life experience, life with his mother, who had always hoped for a new trial, but never lived to see it happen. Thanks to Attorney Rizzuti, despite many setbacks that he went through, three appeals overturned, he never gave up. 36 years of this man's life. He knew Winchell was innocent and he was going to get him a new trial. If appointed as a judge, someone else, I deleted as an Attorney Rizzuti is an example of the kind of judge to be appointed to the Superior Court that this council should demand. And I did put and reject, for an example, someone recently voted by the council to Superior Court with just 2 trials and 6 cases in 21 years. So that's in the record, and I wanted to say that, and this is the first time I think you've come, judges, right?
So I'm here all the time, Counselor.
You must be hiding.
I know you.
Right there.
Well, I just want to recognize him, and I want the people of Massachusetts to know what a person that we have put on the Superior Court. God bless you.
Thank you.
One of many outstanding judges. Thank you, Counselor. And with that, this hearing is closed. Thank you.
I gotta go to lunch.
We'll go ahead and get us started, okay? Go ahead and call our meeting to order. Afternoon, everyone. I'd like to recognize Counselor Kennedy for a prayer and for leading us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
I would like all of us to take a moment of silence. With the victims of 9/11, obviously a tragic day that occurred 23 years ago. We all lived through. We're doing allegiance to the flag
Of the United
States of America.
And to the republic, which stands one nation, under God, indivisible, liberty and justice for all.
Good afternoon, everyone. It's pretty heavy. Not messing around earlier meetings. I'd like to recognize Counselor Ianella for a motion to record advice and consent for the financial warrant.
Thank you, so moved.
Second.
Motion made by Counselor Ianella, seconded by Counselor DiPaolo. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? The ayes have it. I'd like to recognize Counselor Devaney for a motion to record advice and consent for the pending list of notaries public.
So move, Lieutenant Governor.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Counselor Duff. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? The ayes have it. And I'd like to recognize Counselor Ferreira for a motion to record advice and consent for the appointment of Heath E. Antonio to the position of Associate Justice of the District Court.
I am honored to make that motion.
Thank you. Is there a second? Seconded by Counselor Kennedy. Any discussion? Let me get Counselor Ferreira and then Counselor Devaney.
I just want to thank the governor's office and you, Lieutenant Governor, and the legal team, the JNC and the councils here for a great hearing last week. Keith has been practicing law for over 25 years, extraordinary human being, extraordinary individuals, tried hundreds of cases in the district court, the superior court, been to the appeals court, the SJC. There's not a single person that I've ever talked to that doesn't have a great thing to say about Keith Antonio. He's going to make a great addition to the district court, and I thank everyone.
Thank you, Counselor Devaney.
You said it all.
I agree. You concur. Okay, perfect. Glad we've got a great candidate. If there's no other comments or questions, I'll ask the secretary to please call the roll about it.
Counselor Kennedy,
Yes.
Counselor DiPaolo,
Yes.
Counselor Jacobs,
Yes.
Counselor Ferrer,
Yes.
Counselor Devaney. Yes. Counselor Ianella.
Yes.
Counselor Duff.
Yes.
7 members voting, 7 in the affirmative. The matter carries unanimously. And I believe that concludes our business for today. So I entertain a motion to adjourn. Motion made by Counselor Jacobs. Is there a second? Seconded by Counselor DiPaolo. All those in favor? Any opposed? The ayes have it. We stand adjourned.
Great job.